Okay. Welcome, intrepid voyagers, into the world of the mysterious, dark, and underbelly of Hollywood, the B, C, D, and Z movies. And we are your host, the Turkish Diplomats, bringing you public service announcements not to watch this shit. That is one of our hosts there, Calvin Roach. Say something
Hello.
to us.
I'm here, beautiful as always.
And our second host is Paul Hogue, who has a reputation in some of the darker underbellies of the internet as being a relatively nice guy.
Nipples are burning.
And I, of course, am Thomas Kroll. Today's selection is brought to you by my choice. It's a film called Star Pilot. And before we get into the plot or anything of this, I got to tell you, it's an Italian film that started out as in 1966 as the title 2 + 5 = Mission Hydra. Then it was
part of that title, but I couldn't see the whole thing. So thank you. That's the Italians renamed everything.
Well, no, it was when Star Wars came out. This was re-released shortly after Star Wars, and it was rebranded Star Pilot. So that's how we ended up with that name. And it had a couple of different names, and like in Turkey, it's called something else, and everywhere. But
I did notice that. Go ahead, guys.
Oh no, I didn't really have anything to say after that.
Well, it came out in 1966, and I did notice that it must have been overdubbed in English again at some point, because at one point they mentioned Starfleet, Warp 5, and Impulse engines. So either they watched a lot of Star Trek in that first season, or it's been done over.
Yeah, I imagine it has. But this film, I think, has just a little bit of everything. It's got space aliens crashing. It's got not Chinese, but Asian secret agents. Secret Asian man.
I was guessing that I thought they might be Japanese when they said they weren't from the People's Republic, but then they are referred to as Chinese by somebody. So I think they might have been Taiwanese, but I don't know.
They at some point the villainous refers to them as Chinese more than once. But we are Oriental, but we are not Chinese. That's what they started off with.
They were very poignant in that point.
Yeah, they were very clear about that.
And we also have aliens speaking in tongues, which we'll get into a little bit later.
The first evangelical aliens that
So, but honest to God, here's the reason why I was attracted to this film. It mentions Sardinia, and I lived in Sardinia for like 3 years when I was in the military. So I thought, let's see what kind of crap this is, and that was my whole thought in picking this film.
See, I was afraid you were going to have flashbacks while watching it, or while we talked about it.
Well, that was kind of one of the you don't get to see much outside of the ship.
Yeah,
I paid close attention while they were driving to, and that looks like Sardinia. They're just kind of rolling hills of nothing. It's which I always described as Arizona underwater because it was an island. It just, sorry. But
Well, I
So
gotta say I was slightly disappointed because I didn't see one goddamn sardine in the entire.
See, I was afraid that someone was going to open a jar of mayonnaise and you'd flip out, like they did during Supply Run. So, but I mean, Jack, when you said Sardinia, that gave you a chuckle too, and the flashback of a very large phone bill from Thomas one night.
I do apologize. That's a story for another time.
And the speaking in tongues thing, I actually thought was pretty well done. It almost sounded like a well concocted language, and not just
Yeah, and
gibberish.
it may have actually been an actual language that none of us just really recognized, but
Yeah, it could have been.
at least it wasn't like English or Italian played backwards.
Well, there was some Russian in there.
Yeah,
There was a
And
touch.
and there was a note that they looked at and they said, well, maybe it's, and they just start throwing out languages. Well, maybe it's this. And they do say Russian. I'm like, well, that's Russian because I at least recognized one word was capsule
mm-hmm.
that was in that message. And there's a scene late in the movie where I'm not giving anything away here because in the last 15 minutes, they shoved as much as they could into one 15-minute block as they possibly could.
Oh yeah.
And but they find this ship. I think it had sent out a distress beacon or a half message. That's what it was.
Yeah, the message was cut off and repeated.
Right. And that was the one that they didn't understand. And when the guy got on there, he said Tovarish to the pilots. And I'm like, well, that's Russian. So they know they're Russian.
Yeah.
And what they don't see, apparently, because that you do see is that they're dead. They're just skeletons inside. And I really like how they simulated weightlessness in those scenes because they just slowed everything down and shot stuff backwards,
or upside down.
Yeah.
Camera upside down.
I didn't think it didn't look that horrible, except that everything else seemed to have gravity around.
Yeah, and of course they had their space respirators, which were like plastic tubes, but no helmets to breathe through. But at that one point when they landed on that other alien planet, she wore a space helmet.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yes.
I mean, there were moments when they would actually touch on something that was science, like real science, and then they would do stuff like that.
That's when their science advisor had gotten up and like gone down the street, grabbed a sandwich. He comes back and he's like, "What the hell is going on?"
We didn't know where you were, so we picked up a straw and said, "Put it in your mouth sideways. It's a respirator." So let's get into the plot of this.
Okay.
Who would like to start that? Or okay, so there's this guy who is a scientist or a technician. I'm not sure exactly what his position is. Anyway, okay, it starts out with a farmer riding a horse, apparently in Sardinia, and there is a big noise, and he looks up and sees something on the mountain or in the sky or something like that.
Right.
It scares him. A building falls down. And then these scientists go, well, we've been monitoring it now for 3 months. And they're in this like log cabin building someplace. And
there's a stain.
Well, actually, pardon?
There's a big stain on the ground.
Yeah. What it actually reminded me was almost shot for shot was that one sci-fi movie where oh God, I can't even remember the name of the film we did, where it had Mark of the Zombies. Mark of the Astro Zombies, where the 3 scientists gathered around the table and talked to each other while the girl and her boyfriend and love interest were teasing each other, poking at each other. Mm-hmm. Reminded me of the scene where in Astro Zombies, they were standing around the table and talking about these weird monsters that are running through the streets and chopping people up. And it was all very casual. But anyway, they're talking about this, and they show a shot or a photograph of what looks like a bunch of flour laying on the ground.
Yes.
So they decide that they're going to go to Sardinia and investigate it. Meanwhile, the only one who's got any observational skills whatsoever is the young girl who's the daughter of the scientist.
Louisa.
Mm-hmm. Louisa.
She keeps noticing that they're being followed, and they just keep blowing it all off. And then there's an accident on the way over there, and they get to Sardinia after getting on a helicopter and flying to the island. And they get there, and there's some guys in a log cabin who have been sending messages. Here's their coded message system, and I love this. That it's so stupid. It's genius. They would call somebody on the phone and then tap out Morse code on the desk.
Yes.
It was actually
then they
a
openly
neat little
talk
thing that they did, because there was a callback to it later.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're trying to send a message securely, not very many people are going to go, "Oh, that's Morse code," which, you know, I thought, yeah, that's kind of genius. But then they would talk about it. So what's he saying? And they're still got the phone in their hand. Oh, he said that such and such, you know.
Yeah.
And they go exploring into the ground covered area where the flower is spread out and apparently growing rather quickly. And they find caves. They go into the caves, and they spaceship that has conveniently crashed upright in perfect condition into the mountain.
Yeah.
And that's where they encounter the aliens, who are going to end up kidnapping them, forcing them to repair their ship, and then escaping, taking them hostage kind of voluntarily.
Yeah.
And then the Russian crew sends a distress signal, which that kind of comes out of nowhere. And there's a lot of little things that just don't make much sense at this point. And then they land on a planet, and this was my favorite part. It was the Bigfoot planet of Little Sasquatch. They weren't huge, but they attacked, so they all ran away in the spaceship, and
except for
the Oriental non-Chinese.
They killed the two Chinese guys.
Yes.
They just abandoned them and never spoke of them again.
And that's the story basically, because you have the plot, but
when the rocket ship finally takes off, when they repair the rocket ship and it takes off, the entire country of Italy sees it happen. Like, people are at the Colosseum and they're pointing upwards, and a priest and a nun point upwards, and statues are already pointing upwards, and all of Italy sees them take off.
And here's the thing I didn't get. It's like the thing that broke the spaceship and stranded them there in Italy, it was like a carburetor and an antenna.
It was a whip antenna.
It was.
And it was just a little crooked.
We are from a very advanced planet, but our ship is broken and only you can fix it.
I'm surprised they didn't have a little razorback head to go on top of it.
A little jack-in-the-box head bobbling around, yeah.
Talking about a convoy, boys. Let's go trucking through the night.
Okay, so late in the movie, when they get to where, so literally the last 10, 15 minutes of this movie, they are just throwing shit at you.
Yeah.
That has really nothing to do with the rest of the plot. You know, like finding the ship that sent the partial message and landing on some other planet, and then it turns out there's a nuclear war, that a nuclear war has occurred on Earth in the time they've been gone, and which caused flooding. And here's the reason why that was in there, was because they didn't have enough. They decided, hey, we'll borrow from a couple of Japanese-made movies. And we'll insert that footage toward the end. And it's no doubt because, for one, the production value shot way up. And then Casey Kasem is in there. And
yes.
Casey Kasem, who is overdubbed because, well, you just can't have Casey Kasem talk. You've got to find a better voice than Casey Kasem, right? And anyway, but the thing was, they grabbed from these two movies,
which, by the way, I'm going to say it's an homage to Godzilla because the stock footage that they used came from two Toho studio films.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And one of those Toho studios had already borrowed from another movie. So you're watching a third generation movie in the so there's two movies mixed into it.
Yeah.
And really three.
Yeah, and then because they do the whole while we've been traveling at light speed, months or decades could have passed on Earth. So this when they fly back, see the replay of the nuclear war, and somebody says only the Colosseum is still standing. And I'm like,
this is a very
out of all humanity's accomplishments, the Colosseum is still there. So then they decide to go off to someplace else, right? They decided to go somewhere else, and it turns out that the captain, whose name I never caught, because my closed captioning on the television kept making up new words for everything it had heard. So I never knew her name.
Kaylee or something like that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was like Kaylin or K9 or something.
Her K. We'll call her K.
Well, so basically, what you're telling all of the world here listening is that after all of the nuclear disasters hit Earth, the only thing remaining of man's greatest civilizations is a ruin.
Yeah. My God, that was something deeper than I expected it to be.
Yeah, apparently all the Roman wars did damage to the Colosseum, but it does fine through the nuclear winter somehow.
But then they decided to go off, I think, back to the aliens' home planet, where thousands of years have passed, and they get there, and there's civilization. And she, for some reason, she gasses everybody on the ship and knocks them unconscious. So
I thought she killed everybody.
They go outside by herself and see that their planet is dead and ruined. And there's some kind of placard or sign or something that tells the story of what happened and how they now have a chance to build a new paradise or some nonsense like that by learning from the past.
Oh yeah, it's a big granite stone that's sitting in a lake, and
yeah.
With bizarre fake language on it, and
for some reason or other, the Earth doctor can read it perfectly.
Did you guys notice that?
That's what sold me. Yeah.
A couple of times on my closed caption, he said, "Professor told me." Like what? Did you guys notice that at least once, whoever was dubbing the professor's voice, they changed actors?
I thought so, because it was a different voice later on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then
I didn't catch that at all. I was probably focused on something else in the film.
I will say that the daughter of the professor, Louisa, she was very, very pretty, and she actually reminded me of someone I've seen elsewhere or elsewhere.
She's the girl from college you just wanted to hang out with for no reason.
You're kind of right, really, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you something. She was in it when she made this. She looked at the script, must have looked at the script before this was made, and said, well, I've got shitty dialogue. Everybody else has shitty dialogue. This is a shitty story. I am going to be remembered 60 years later by old fat men when this movie is long since forgotten. Because every chance she gets to make a show in this movie, she does.
Yeah.
She dances. She does just a simple move. She'll do this, you know. She goes to get a dish out of the sink and she does a back kick.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
she literally sticks
You
her
want-
in every. She's wearing these tight pants and she literally sticks her butt in everyone's face, including her dad. Okay. And you can tell she's just doing stuff off the top, and they just react as because they just carry on with the script. They don't react to what
Yes.
she does, like
Yes.
when she almost killed them in the helicopter.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
literally grabs
Grab the
pilot,
pilot?
goes back on him, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And so she was like, when this movie is over, they are going to remember me.
Yes.
And oh, she just
I think this was like her only film. I think she just dating the director
She-
after that.
yeah, she only did. I was just looking just now. It's only like a couple of movies. She doesn't even have her picture in anything. I think she was in U-571, which was a good movie, came out in 2000.
Huh, okay.
But she was almost 70 by then.
Yeah.
And then just like Star Pilot and a couple of other movies right around then, and pretty much that's it. I think all the rest of the things she's just got little bit parts, but
I think if
she's
I were
still around.
I think if I were to just, I guess, sum up this movie in one word, it would be harmless. Because there was no profanity, there was no nudity. What kissing there was not very passionate. And apparently she brought like extra sexy clothes that looked just like her, so that the villain captain could wear the same outfit.
Yeah.
The mesh bodysuit with the red feathers. I thought that was kind of odd that she brought clothes for her. And they kept talking about her movie career, but don't tell my dad I'm gonna be in a movie.
And they keep asking her questions about it, and she won't tell them.
Yeah. But I mean, it wasn't a terrible movie, but it was just sort of, I don't know, like a margarine of movies when you're expecting, real butter.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to say, out of all of the film, my favorite part was when they landed on Sasquatch planet.
Yeah. Which, the thing about the like, and they're wearing these kind of ape costumes with these ugly faces.
Yeah.
They, at least, I mean, considering all the Bigfoot movies we saw where where the producers could barely be troubled to get something that would even zip up on the back,
Right. Yeah.
They at least had what, 8 or 10 of these,
Yeah.
mini Sasquatch apes in this thing, all with matching faces.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of cracked me up about them is that they're small, but they're not Ewok small.
Right.
It's like, well, I guess he's tall enough to get on this ride, kind of small.
Yeah.
They're Asian secret agent size.
And but yeah, they get into a fight with these guys, and Paolo, who started off as the love interest, and then she falls in love with one of the aliens because apparently there's some fight to
Space Elvis.
What's that?
He looked like Elvis. He's Space Elvis.
Space Elvis.
His name was Belsi. It was Artie and Belsi.
It's funny because
which sounds kind of like Elvis.
Paolo clearly has eye makeup on.
Yeah.
And eyelashes and stuff. And then Belsi gets on and it's like he just gives up and starts wiping up. Paolo just looks depressed for the rest of the movie. he ain't getting it anymore.
Nope.
Because the other guy Belsi put on some space sugar on her.
But yeah, I didn't think this movie was horrible. Didn't think it was great. Like I said, it was just like I said, like I told you guys earlier. To me, the one of the funniest parts was what was being closed captioned on my TV. Because there was like this electronic music, and it had this typical '60s synthesizer sounds, woo, and my TV closed captioning would read the word "you."
Yeah, I had that too. Yeah, it had some pretty creative captioning. I like how there was one point where, like when they cut in the Japanese movie, they use some of their soundtrack because it's much better and much.
They did.
Whereas in the Italian movie, like I kind of liked the opening music.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
at one point they had like the siren sound.
yeah.
And it sounded like, you remember those old 65-in-1 electronic kits you used to be able to get?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It had the little, you would connect the wires with these, they had these little springs so you didn't have to solder anything.
Uh-huh.
And one of the projects was a siren. And you had a potentiometer on the thing, so you would do, and it just sounded like that was the siren. Well, that's the siren that they used in that
Yeah, and when it opened up with the opening title card, it showed the spaceship hitting a planet and cracking it open. So I thought, well, this is going to be a comedy.
It looked like a comedy open, yeah. And it's a little phallic too, by the way.
It did look a little phallic, yes.
I always
trust me, if anybody knows about little phalluses, it's me. So
oh, I've seen your film collection.
It's all microfilm. Anyway, I'll show myself out. Thank you. Good night.
And in the short film category, I was going to ask, I'm just kind of looking through my notes here. They fly to, I was going to ask you, Tom, they talk about going to Marino, and then that's where they were going to get the helicopter. Is Marino like a city in Sardinia, or?
Not that I remember. If I remember right, Marino is on the coast of Italy, because you can't go like from Rome to the port directly. It's an inland city.
Okay.
And you can go there by waterway, like a river, or train. But whenever we would go from Sardinia to Rome, you caught a ferry that was overnight, and then you ended up in this little town, and I can't remember where it was. I want to say it was called Civitavecchia, but Marino, I think. Quick story, one time we were trying to get back from Rome on leave to Sardinia, and the ferry company that we hired to take the trip back went on strike. So we had to go to the next town. We rode on the trunk of another car to get to this other town so that these people could take the ferry. We could get on the ferry and go. And they went on strike when they heard the folks down the coast went on strike. So it was there was a naval academy there who was going to go to Sardinia with us, and they were going to teach these cadets stuff. They just confiscated the boat. So the Italian military confiscate a ferry. They pilot us all over there, and we got back home in time. But we got like 3 minutes left, gentlemen. Anything else we can add?
I did want to go back to on the way. So because we skipped over it kind of quickly, this accident that takes place while they're going to the airport.
Yeah.
So, first of all, real cheap accident, because you can't even see any damage to anything.
Right.
And yet these two guys check out this car and they think the guy inside is dead.
Right.
So they're following in this little red sports car, and I guess it was an old Porsche or something like
I
that.
have no idea.
It was a sweet looking little sports car.
It
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
But it was so small that the doctor and Paolo are sitting up front, and Louisa is putting on her show in the back seat, but there's barely room for her, so she's literally against the seats and like playing with her hair and bugging them and doing whatever she can to ham it up. And then they come upon the accident, and they volunteer to take what may be a dead body to the airport, which I guess the Italians handle accidents differently. How they got the body into the car, into the back seat with her,
Right.
Because you were like turning around and looking back, and the dude's laying down.
and apparently he's faking being unconscious because he opened his eyes once.
Because he heard them say about going to this weird anomaly thing. Yeah.
And do we ever see him again?
They get him to the airport, and for some reason, there's a doctor's office at the airport.
Right.
And they put him in the doctor's office, and they check him out. And then he says, "Oh, it's like this comedy bit." And he jumps up and runs out of the doctor's office and jumps into a car, which we don't know whose car.
It was the Chinese. It was the non-Chinese Oriental car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he steals that car and takes off, and we never see him again.
We don't.
There was a lot that could have been developed if this film hadn't been like 89 minutes long.
Yeah.
But no, we're not going to do that.
It was like it was like they kept, somebody else finished the rest of this movie, and somebody else would just start writing.
Yeah.
And they got to some point where they went, we could just steal from other movies.
I want to do a quick mention on the director here, Pietro Francisci. He was like real big with the Hercules films from way back, the Sandal.
Well, the boys are going to have to come up with a better way to track time because they've done it again. So come back next time and join us for Charming Noise with the Turkish Diplomats.